Okay, good morning, everybody. Thank you all for joining our webinar series titled Substance Use Disorder in the Subpopulations. My name is Scott Sexton, and I'm here representing the Central Michigan Recovery and Education Network, and it's my privilege to moderate the session today. Before we start, I do want to talk about how to claim the continuing education certificate. So please follow the prompt that you see on the screen here, and there's really 3 steps that we want to follow. I will post this link in the chat here in just a moment, but we're going to have you go to med.cmich.edu/CME-CERT. And when you get to that website, you will have to kind of sign in or create an account if you haven't already created one. And then once creating that account has been completed, you'll click on Claim Credit. It's going to be on the left banner on the screen, and then click on Claim Credit for Other, and then select whichever session you attended. I'll go over what our session's called in just a moment here. Once you finish that, you will actually receive a certificate available immediately. And then you'll just have to forward that information on, depending on which type of CE you're claiming, will depend on who you sent that to. And their emails are on the bottom of the screen here. And again, I will put that information into our chat as well. All right. Now, before we begin, we do ask that when you have questions today, please use the Q&A function. It's a chat function that you can find probably, I think it's along the bottom of the screen here on your Zoom session. And any of those questions will then be addressed at the completion of the presentation today. And with that being said, it is now my honor to introduce today's session and the speaker. And so the session that you're attending today is called Integrative Justice, a Healthcare Approach for Treatment Courts. It's going to be delivered by Judge Patrick Shannon, who represents the Saginaw Chippewa Indian Tribal Court. Patrick Shannon has served as the Chief Judge of the Saginaw Chippewa Tribal Court in Mount Pleasant, Michigan since 1999. He holds a Juris Doctorate from the University of Detroit School of Law, Bachelor's in Business and Doctorate in Education from Central Michigan University, as well as a Master's of Public Health from the University of Michigan. Judge Shannon served as an elective prosecuting attorney for Chippewa County, a tribal prosecutor, and served as a Special Assistant United States Attorney. He's a board member for the Michigan Association of Treatment Court Professionals. Judge Shannon is also in the business of keeping people alive rather than sentencing them to jail by conducting adult substance misuse hearings in drug or treatment court. He advises other professionals working in similar treatment courts to incorporate basic principles of public health and strive for a more collaborative, client-centered, and productive approach for justice. So for our session today, this presentation will provide a timeline for the growth of the tribal court's client-centered Healing to Well treatment program with its reliance and focus on public health, medical, and nursing theories. So please join me today in welcoming Judge Shannon.
It's a pleasure to be here today because in the last few months, I've really changed the focus of any of these presentations to what I refer to as an integrative justice approach to treatment courts and a health care approach. Just to give you a little bit of background about me is that I've been here for a long time, but then, I have a law enforcement background as well. And it was probably in the early 90s, as a county prosecutor, I noticed, I questioned whether or not there was a public health approach to enforcement of criminal laws, because violence is a public health problem. But at that time, there really wasn't much of an interest in looking at it through that particular lens. So I was in Sault Ste. Marie, that's Chippewa County. And by the way, that's the home of the Sault Ste. Marie tribe and also Bay Mills Indian communities. So, and it's on an international border. And so we had a number of cross-jurisdictional issues that we faced in law enforcement. But I'd often wondered, what is how does public health interact with violence? Because I was certainly dealing with some homicides and sexual assaults and other type of assaultive behavior. So I looked at, I tried to investigate, and I found that the University of Michigan School of Public Health had I think it was probably one of the initial part-time programs. But it really wasn't part-time. It was 60 hours and we had to meet there. It was called, it was OJOC, on job, on campus. And I was a real outlier, let me tell you, because I was there with physicians and nurses and dentists. And there was one other lawyer, but that was a very, very difficult program. So I commuted between Sault Ste. Marie and Ann Arbor for 2 years. My final project was entitled Intentional Violence as a Public Health Problem. And it didn't ring anybody's bells there. And at that time, CDC wasn't looking at violence as a public health problem. So regardless, I went back home and continued to be a prosecutor. But the education that I received in healthcare, or healthcare administration, has served me well because it forced me to look at a lot of things differently, asking why is this behavior occurring. So, and I've been here for, let's see here. I'm sharing the screen and I'm having a little bit of difficulty advancing that screen.
Hey, Patrick, just click on the screen right there.
Yeah.
And then down on the bottom right, you'll see a little arrows that popped up, or the bottom left, I apologize. See little arrows that popped up. There you go.
There we go. Thank you. So just for the viewers, there may be a couple little glitches here because I'm not real comfortable with this, but an introduction, I'll give you a little introduction to tribal courts as opposed to state courts. I've practiced in all state, tribal, federal, doesn't really matter, but Michigan has 12 federally recognized tribes, and each one of them are sovereign in that they have their own constitutions and they have their own legislative bodies, which are tribal councils, and then they all have tribal courts. And so the tribes, and this may be a little different from state to state, but Michigan, the tribes are quite powerful, subject to what's called the plenary power of the federal government. But tribal court jurisdiction is limited, criminal jurisdiction is limited to 1 year and or a $10,000 fine. So you can have a variety of different types of charges. The more serious the charges become, they'll find their way into the federal court system. And FBI, along with tribal police, will investigate. And if it's a major crime or one that's identified as one that should be in federal court, it'll go to the federal court. But overall, the tribal courts are, if you think of it like, compare it with the states, it's like a misdemeanor court, okay? Certainly the tribal judges in the state of Michigan, you have jurisdiction to incarcerate people up to 1 year and also charge fines, substantial fines. And the tribal courts only have jurisdiction over Indians, okay? And an Indian is defined as anyone who's a member of a federally recognized tribe. Probably some of the viewers out in the audience probably know that maybe you may have Indian blood or native blood, but unless you have native blood and you are a member of a federally recognized tribe, there's well over 500 in the United States. If you fall within the jurisdiction of the tribe and you commit an act that could be viewed as criminal, you'd come to a tribal court rather than state court. So, you know, just to go back a few years ago, when I was a county prosecutor, and this is a long time ago, the tribal police and the state police and the county, they were not cross-designated. But in the early 80s, we worked on a number of projects to get our law enforcement what's called cross-designated, so that if someone was in a rural area of the Upper Peninsula and needed law enforcement, they could call the tribal police officer, or they could call the sheriff or the state police or whomever. But today, they all interact and they're cross-deputized and also federally deputized as well. And so the tribal courts only have jurisdiction over Indians. And so most all of the participants in our Healing to Wellness program are a treatment court. Healing to Wellness really is our treatment court. They're all members of this tribe. Saginaw Chippewa tribe. And so the effects of what's happened in Indian country, and Indian country is a legal concept. We're talking about what is the jurisdiction of that particular Indian tribe. And we call it Indian country. And what's been the effect? And it's opioids, you know, when we first opened this up and started looking at it about 8 years ago, it was heroin or cocaine, certainly marijuana at that time, but it was an alcohol. But it was, you know, the more dangerous stuff was heroin and cocaine. That's all changed now. We're dealing with an epidemic of methamphetamine and fentanyl, which just kills people. So it was a few years ago, I had a young woman I had put in jail, and I let her out and she started using at the same level as heroin, and she died immediately. And so I said, that's just never going to happen again. We were able to get some grant money and put together the initial program was an adult healing to wellness program. And so adult people who would run afoul for substance misuse, whether it be heroin or alcohol, the adult, anyone over 18 could come into the program and we'd work with them. And what do? We're not providers, okay? We are an enhanced probation system. And so we go out and find the services. And one major difference between a tribal community and the state or the non-tribal community is the tribe has, they have clinics, they have primary care clinics, they have dental clinic, and they do provide behavioral health services as well, among other services. And we thought if we could just coordinate these services, especially in healthcare, we could do better by our clients. And we've been able to do that. And what we've done is really look at this as a public health issue of prevention, intervention, and treatment. We want to know how to prevent what's going on, how to intervene, and how to treat it. The last two have been pretty good. The real difficult part is prevention. And as a county prosecutor, 100 years ago, we had a DARE program, and we were the second in the state. Sheboygan just beat us by, you know, a week of a graduation, but that never really turned out. That might not have been the best method of prevention. But you know, right now we're not stymied, but it's been very difficult with this, with the epidemic of methamphetamine, because, and we'll talk about this, is that we rely now in the courtroom. Every Monday we have treatment court. I have a nurse practitioner, primary, you know, our family nurse practitioner, and also we have a physician who is the collaborating physician who is an expert in Kara Poland is an expert in substance misuse and in maternal health and things like that. But things have changed, and we've learned that methamphetamine addiction, Dr. Poland says you have to kill it with counseling, whereas some of the other items like opioids or heroin, we had medication-assisted treatment that we could provide for alcohol. But we're stymied right now with this, and it's overwhelming. You know, a local jail who we rely on, the jailer came in and said that they have X number of beds, and the majority of those are meth users, and to get the proper treatment. Unfortunately, I've had to rely upon jail now more recently to get people detoxed off methamphetamine and then get them into a treatment program. But, and that's how this has all changed. But then, you know, a year ago, we have this COVID outbreak, and that really exasperated our issues, the kind of work we're doing. And and so what we had to do is we lost contact, because every morning we'd have all of our clients in here. You know, we'd have 20 participants in the program. And then when that stopped, we lost contact. All we could do was phone them or do whatever. But last June, we started bringing them back. We've I relied upon my son, who's a nurse lawyer in California, and he investigates nursing homes for the state. And I relied upon him to get best protocols. And so we've essentially created protocols that you'll find in a nursing home. We certainly mask, we space, we clean. We've got the plexiglass all over the place, and we created a bubble essentially, but that allowed us to bring our clients back in, because that interpersonal relationship is extremely important in this whole effort. And I know, unfortunately, with the state courts, they were really just shut down, and unfortunately, I think that probably had an effect, and we've seen an increase of deaths too. The treatment court team, our healing to wellness team, is certainly, it's the judge, it's probation, defense attorney, physician, nurse practitioner, and the physician nurse practitioner is critical, and that's what sets us apart from other tribal courts, and especially state courts. You're not going to find any court in the state that has a nurse practitioner sitting in the courtroom, employed by the court to work with us. As you know, nurse practitioners are mid-levels, and they need a collaborating physician, and our collaborating physician is Dr. Kara Poland, who's a faculty member at Michigan State Medical School. And certainly then child protection, behavioral health, law enforcement, health clinic, and treatment court personnel, and tribal council. So, and also we start each session with a prayer, which you can't do in the state court, but tribal governments are sovereign. Tribal courts have that authority to do that. It's not a violation of the First Amendment. And but in any event, just to go up with the physician and nurse practitioner, that really sets us apart, because I don't know how any judge could make a decision regarding the well-being or the life of a person who's addicted to any kind of a controlled substance, including alcohol, without that kind of input. And what you will notice is there are different theories in nursing and medicine, and we rely on both. Nurses I tend to think, are more holistic. They look at the social, the familial, the social, and not only just the medical part, what's wrong with the person. They try to work with the entire person, and not saying that physicians don't, but they have a different approach to things. And the reason I know that, my wife is a nursing professor and has been for many years. My son's a nurse and a lawyer and a master's in health administration, but so I've been around that. And then I have a son who's a dentist, but we've never had a physician in the family. But it's an interesting combination, and there's a tendency to I hate to use the word silo, but I think that's very apparent in the justice system. Is that you tend to find judges who tend to be all-knowing, and there's a lot of things they don't know or don't understand. The interaction of substance abuse and some of the trauma that people have experienced in their lives. And so that's why, I think for me, the most difficult part of all of this is the prevention approach. How do we prevent substance misuse? How do we do that? I know we know more about trauma and resiliency and ACEs and all of that stuff, but I ask my friends who are interested in it, okay, so what does that mean? What are you going to do about it? If someone's been has been traumatized as a child or at some other point, so what? I mean, tell us what to do. And that's what we try to do here is, like I said, we're not providers. Our staff, they'll go out and they'll find it within the tribal community or off the tribal community. Services for people, for example, counseling, psychological or psychiatric involvement. And so we'll find that. all of our clients who come in to the program are given a physical examination, okay, which includes dental. And because I found that sometimes, extensive drug use will have a detrimental effect in someone's dental care. And so what we provide that, we get them involved. We make sure that they have a counseling session, and we work with them. And our current programs, it started out as an adult. That grant ended, and at the ending of that grant, we understood that we weren't looking at the entire picture. And so we created a family court, healing to wellness, or treatment court, so that we bring in a family. We identify either through if that parent has gotten in trouble criminally, or there's been an abuse and neglect petition filed. That can get them into our program. And we work, number one, with avoiding jail if it's a criminal case, but on the family side, we look at reunification, okay, and of the family, get them healthy. And as a judge, we can divert cases, we can avoid jail, we can do a lot of different things if people, as a term and condition of probation, work with us, and we're willing to work with them to do that. But at the very core of this is understanding the nursing and the medical attention that has to be given to each one of these clients. It's serious. And so but on the prevention side, what we've done over the years, the tribe does have some education and training of our staff, community involvement. We, by and large, the community here is very supportive of what we're doing. Law enforcement as well, because the healthier people get, the less they have to deal with them. And we created a tribal action plan a few years ago, which is really a strategic plan. And we really look at now maternal, juvenile, adolescent intervention, and all levels, because we have a family approach to all of this. Now, on the intervention side, certainly we have social services if there is an abuse and neglect type situation. All those cases come here, and the tribal court has the authority to terminate parental rights, and unfortunately, I've had to do that in the last few years. But so we do have that here as well. Medical and nursing, and I can't stress that enough. And that's once the person comes into our program, they will be evaluated by the nurse practitioner and a physician at the clinic, and also if there's dental care. And surprisingly enough, is that we've headed off other chronic type diseases. People might not know that they were pre-diabetic, and coming into the program, they learn that they're pre-diabetic and they better change their diet or do some other things. We rely upon spirituality. That's a very big part of any Native community, both traditional and Christian or other types of religions. We support that, we promote it, and that's probably something you might not get in a state court. And then the community effort, and that is families, and to get the families involved, and law enforcement. They're active partners in this, at least with the tribal court. I remember when we first started, I kind of heard rumors that we were turning into a huggy court, and that, I thought, well, that's not really true, but because it may look softer, but at the same time, we're in the business of saving lives. So our programs, we started out, as I mentioned, as an adult healing to wellness, or an adult treatment court. We morphed into a family court. And also a year or so ago, we started a juvenile system where we're dealing directly with the juveniles. So, and that's probably one of the most difficult areas when you're dealing with a 12 to 16-year-old, and for various reasons, is to work with those kids and their families. So our treatment modalities are different than maybe what you will, or what we rely upon. Like I said, there's medication-assisted treatment. And 5 or 6 years ago, I was at a Michigan Association of Treatment Courts session, and I heard a fellow speak. It was a physician from the Grand Rapids area. I believe he was affiliated with Spectrum. He's since left, but he was talking about medication-assisted treatment. He says, this is, not everyone believes in this. And, but we've found medication-assisted treatment for heroin users and alcohol and some other is very, very beneficial. It allows the brain to heal, so people can seek some other forms of treatment like psychosocial type treatments. And what we did was provide training for the physicians in the clinic, which was really important, and to get them certified to be able to prescribe certain types of medications. And it's worked out. And now with Dr. Poland on staff as a collaborating and a person who can provide consulting to our physicians, that even works better, because as you know, physicians, and it's true with lawyers, we like to talk to other lawyers, and physicians are like that. They like to talk to other physicians to learn what they're doing and what's being successful. And Dr. Poland provides that type of thing here. And then what I now refer to as NAT, nursing assisted treatment, where the whole concept of nursing, to get nurses involved in the courtroom and in our program has been extremely important. I do want to mention that, and I'll probably mention it again, is that the Michigan State Medical Society, which represents the MDs in the state and the osteopaths and the psychiatrists, in conjunction with the Michigan Association of Treatment Courts, are going to be are planning 4 regional trainings this year to incorporate the medical side of substance abuse in the courtroom. And I happen to be a part of that planning, is to get physicians and jurists and people working in the courts talking and collaborating regarding the people who are coming before the court. To do otherwise is very expensive. We can't incarcerate our way out of this problem. And there are a lot of people who are, I call them back, especially I live in the Upper Peninsula, and I live in Sault Ste. Marie, and it's just different. Just the inability to understand that this is a medical problem and a psychological problem as opposed to a criminal justice problem. It's easy to define it as a criminal justice problem, put people in jail, and forget about them, but it doesn't work. The problems are still there. So also we certainly rely upon the cultural and the spiritual aspects of the community. And now, with maternal health, if moms are pregnant, we deal with that. Paternal health as well is a little more difficult to get the guys involved, but if we build them up culturally and spiritually, we have success stories. And hospitalization, we do rely upon that. We get people into facilities, treatment facilities for certain periods of time. One thing, and I don't know if any of you have noticed this, but it's been going on for years. The so-called treatment centers in Florida and especially California will actually recruit. And I don't know how they get the list, but they'll recruit people to go out and then exhaust any insurance coverage or exhaust the people's money and put them on the street. But then, they don't work with us. We don't know their aftercare or anything like that. So we're really cautious of who we work with. We like to work with people just in the state of Michigan. And there are a number of treatment facilities of people who do a very nice job in the state of Michigan. Unfortunately, many times it's not long enough because our program lasts 6 months to 1 year. And we've had to keep people on longer than that at times because, you know, it's not linear. It's not everyone's going to be done in 6 months or up to a year. This thing is just, you just have to work with each individual. And also on the cycle and social health and telehealth, we do rely somewhat on that. And we learned to pivot a long time ago. For each client, they're all different. You have to pivot. Some may need more cultural or spiritual or medication assisted treatment. And unfortunately, sometimes it just doesn't work out. It's not very often, but sometimes things are so overwhelming for someone that and you'll see it where they don't come to court or they don't come in for their weekly drug testing, because we do drug test twice a week, and then they're required to do a number of other things. And so you'll find it when you'll see. So probably one of the bigger things is the interaction with state, federal, and the other tribal courts. At the state level, we're members and actively involved with the Michigan Association of Treatment Courts. Also at the federal level, we're actively involved with the White House Office of National Drug Control Policy. And we just did a presentation for them, and that's a national organization. And if any of you are interested in that, just look up ONDCP. They have monthly meetings, and originally they started out a few years ago, and they would have a monthly meeting for law enforcement and a monthly meeting for public health. But then they soon realized they're talking about the same issues. And so these are joint meetings between law enforcement and public health. And taking part in that, you can see the evolution of drug use across the country. And we could see that we were headed for a methamphetamine epidemic maybe a couple of years ago. And what we're experiencing now is this stuff's being manufactured in Mexico. So it's become industrialized and shipped over to the United States. And then it's sometimes cut with fentanyl. And then we work with the other tribal courts as well. And the state of Michigan, like I mentioned, there are 12 federally recognized tribes, each having their own tribal court. Big thing is that we have to foster trust among our clients and the communities. And we try to work as closely as we can with the adjoining state systems. And it wasn't always like that. But today it's pretty good. It's pretty good. And so we do overall promote rehabilitation. As I mentioned, this is integrative justice, but you can't have, you have to be able to integrate the principles of justice and healthcare in order to actually do a good job at rehabilitation. And actually, you can't have restorative justice until there's integrative justice. There's a lot of talk about having restorative justice systems, but you got to be able to integrate a lot of the social and the political power of a community to get there. We follow principles of a disease model and public health principles, and we've developed, I think, a client-centered justice system here. And like I said, is that the state has noticed in what we're doing, and I heard it from someone from the Michigan State Medical Society who's putting this together, that what our program is here is considered a best practice. Reality, though, I don't know the state could do what we're doing now because they, as you know, they don't have access to primary care. Many times the clients don't unless they have insurance, or dental care, and or counseling. And so they are hindered. And I guess my only recommendation to the state courts as they go down this road is not to rely just on a physician in the community. We've had great success using our nurse practitioner, and you're more apt to be able to get a mid-level in the courtroom than a physician. But But in any event, it's well worth looking at all of this. And so Scott, or any others, I guess I've kind of come to a conclusion right there, and I'd be willing to field any questions based upon my experiences as a prosecutor and in the courts here. And so.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for that presentation. It was very informative, and we do have a couple of questions in the chat for you. The first question that came in was, how is this program similar to or different from other drug courts that are throughout Michigan in the public court system?
Okay, and I'll be real frank about that. It's quite different. I think I've laid out a few things, is that our clients have access to healthcare, dental care, and a number of other things. I know Michigan Association of Treatment Courts have started on I think about 3 years ago, certification of treatment courts, because they were experiencing what they thought were political treatment courts. People were getting, the courts were getting the money to implement, but they weren't doing a very good job. They were still relying upon incarcerations. So it's and like I said just previously, is that we're viewed as a best practice, and we're quite proud of that, and we're willing to and be real frank about is that when you deal with state agencies, whether they're courts or whatever, they tend to look down their noses at what's going on in Indian country. So, but they can't really do what we're doing at this point, and but I think they're willing to try now. And I know the Supreme Court Justice, Chief Justice, she's putting together a committee to look at redoing how the court systems in the state of Michigan. And I know that's at the very beginning of things, but I don't know if that answered the question. That was just my opinion and observations.
Yes, thank you so much. Another question came in. How is your court funded?
Court is funded. There is Bureau of Indian Affairs money, and also the largest comes from the tribe itself, tribal funds, and just like any other government. And then to do what we're doing here, we've had to go out and get grant money through SAMHSA or the Department of Justice or something like that. And they've been pretty good to work with overall.
Thank you. All right, another question here. Are there other tribal courts in Michigan using your model?
Not that I know of. I know Little Traverse has a physician who appears, but other than that, I don't think so. And I can't think of another court that has both a nursing and a medical model applied. They are different. And so it's important to recognize that.
Absolutely. Okay. Can you speak to the efficacy of drug testing as a deterrent to relapse? I often see clients really trying but struggling to comply with various random drug testing due to transportation and other employment or scheduling barriers that lead to clients feeling.
Yeah, we try to make it as convenient as possible. And we rely on the cups, but we're moving away from that. We're getting a Thermo Fisher, I call it the P machine, which will give us almost instantaneous results. Whether or not it is I think it promotes responsibility and to themselves and also to their terms and conditions of probation. It's extremely useful, and we adhere to those principles of being sober and drug-free for periods of time before they can complete the programs. So it is very integral to our program here. So, and we rely on outside laboratories, not just viewing the plastic containers. We send those out to labs as well to get good stuff. Because you'll see just I call it a cornucopia of drugs sometimes in people. I mean, it's just wild. And then, when you start seeing fentanyl, then we have a problem, because that will kill. It's it's killed too many people.
Thank you for that. We do have more questions rolling in here. The next one is, how can we outpatient providers who offer telehealth services help the tribal community, specifically those who have entered the justice system?
How, through telehealth, or is that, contact me, or contact, at what level are you a healthcare provider? Contact me, and and depending upon where you live, we certainly, there are tribal courts all over the state of Michigan. None on the eastern side. Saginaw, Chippewa is the most eastern, and but most of them are along the shoreline. But there's a very active group of tribal judges and who meet periodically, something called MIJA, Michigan Indian Judges Association. And they would be probably more than happy to take any type of assistance they could. And so I don't know if you want to get in touch with me, I can loop you through those folks too, but yeah.
Awesome, thank you so much. Is part of your family program preparing the family and client for a smooth transition once released? I recently heard someone in recovery state that this was the most difficult challenge of all, as he had lost the structure he was used to.
We try, we rely upon reunification. We want, families are part of every community. I mean, if you blow them up, you're not going to have good outcomes. And so that's why we move from an adult approach to a family approach. We try to effectuate that reunification the best we can. And however it's defined, it has to be defined by the family too. And you don't want me, of course, defining what a family is. So, Ozzie and Harriet died many years ago, I learned. So, and we don't have that anymore.
Thank you. How do you respond to the stigma surrounding individuals with SUD, substance use disorder, and opioid use disorder? Specifically, how do you overcome the societal view that people with substance use disorder should go to jail?
That's easy. I don't send them to jail, but I have that authority. We'll always have to deal with that, and it might not be substance misuse. It could be other areas where we will define people anyway. People will do that to one another, but I don't know. We just ignore it and move on. I remember years ago being in training, it says, what's the difference between diabetes and substance abuse disease? I mean, it's an identifiable disease now, and we deal with it as such. So, and if you look at it under a disease model, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, we don't pick on people with diabetes. So, yeah,
absolutely.
Meant by the disease model. We follow a disease model. So,
all right, I have another question for you.
Jail just isn't the right place. Okay, go ahead.
Do you feel that 1 year in care is enough support? How do you change the environment where people go back to, like their homes and neighborhoods? And how do clients find stability and freedom when returning to the same environment that made them sick?
That's a very good question, because it's something, the phenomena I call it's the dogs you run with. And if you continue to go back with the same pack, you're going to have the same problems many times. We see it time and time again. What the tribe was able to do in the last year or two is to get successfully obtain a grant to build sober living. And that's a movement that's occurring in the state with the Michigan Association of Treatment Courts. I think they have one near Jackson now. And these are long-term facilities for families and people in recovery, which is the rest of their life. So I believe we're going to break ground here in December. And I think the state now is looking at a second facility, but that's extremely important. Safe, drug-free housing it's critical, because like I said, this is not a linear approach. I mean, this is a circle. You've got to work them through, and then they have to be in a safe safe facility. It's not a facility, but safe housing now.
All right. Do you think that the decriminalization of these drugs would help this cause or make the epidemic worse?
I don't know about that. I'm kind of watching Oregon right now because they decriminalized small amounts, okay, user amounts. And, I come from a period of time which we were hell bent on prosecuting everyone who had any amount, but I've really changed. And so, and it'll be interesting to see the effects of the decriminalization of marijuana in Michigan and the effects on, like driving and drunk driving or drug driving and things like that. So, I guess I'm not supportive of it right now. But someone's going to have to show me because I am teachable. But right now I'm not, my concern now is with the epidemic of methamphetamine, how many people are out there on the road, and it's out there driving around under the influence. Any other questions?
I actually have a question, Patrick. Your model is so unique with all of the different levels of care that are integrated. And how did you kind of develop that team and build that collaboration among the different providers in that group?
I didn't. I had to rely upon the guys, the people I talk to, and I work with, and listen to them, because I had some ideas, and then it's just kind of grown over 8 years. I mean, it's just the need was there,
Mm-hmm.
and we got some money, and we got some direction, and we listened to people what they're doing around the state, and started going to Michigan Association of Treatment Corp, which is good. I mean, and listening to some of those folks and listening to some of the judges around the state, they're so good as to this. And I can name many state judges who I don't know how they get done what they're getting done without the resources that we have, but they do an exceptional job. And just listening to their fury, it's really good.
Excellent.
A lot of really good things going on out in the state courts. I just wanted to assure everyone of that.
Very good. Well, thank you so much for this presentation. As I mentioned, it was extremely informative, and the question and answers have been really, really wonderful as well. For those that are in attendance, the link for the continuing education has been dropped into the chat again. And also a reminder that all of our SUD CEU certificates will be emailed to the attendees after the conclusion of the event today. So thank you all for joining us today, and thank you, Judge Shannon, for your time and your presentation. I don't see any other questions at this time. And so I think that concludes our session, but thank you all again and have a great rest of your week.